one idea that I thought was really fascinating is that the sense of scent, our olfactory sense, is not objective, it's subjective, meaning there are no inherently bad scents.
Welcome to our latest episode of Book Reporter Talks To, where our guest today is Francesca Serritella, and we are going to be talking about her latest novel, Full Bloom. Now, I enjoyed a conversation with Francesca about her last book, Ghosts of Harvard, which I think was 5 years ago, possible, when we were all in lockdown, and that's how she was going to be going on the road, was like, moving into her chair there. And we had such a good conversation, and I'm really looking forward to this one as well, because last weekend I read Full Bloom, and I was just thinking of questions. I was folding down pages as I was going through, because there's so many ideas to talk about in this book. So we're doing this interview before Full Bloom comes out, so we don't have our book reporter review yet. So I'm going to share what Adriana Trigiani says about Full Bloom. Francesca Serritella is a literary wonder. Atmospheric and lush, Full Bloom is the story of Iris, so overwhelmed by life, only a miracle could set her free. With one spritz of an elixir, Iris is free to explore her potent past and visit the magical possibilities of her future. Serritella's elegant prose includes a top note of originality, a middle note of pure heart, and a base note of self-discovery, a sensory feast for readers everywhere. And with that intro, welcome, Francesca. So great to see you.
Oh, it's so good to see you, Carol. Thank you for having me. And Adriana's quote is just so lovely and kind and so apt for this book.
It's so spot on, absolutely spot on. She takes every single detail and weaves it in there. So let's start by you telling us about Full Bloom. What's your, somebody ran into somebody, I wrote this book.
Right. Full Bloom is about a woman named Iris Sundergren. She's just turned 35, but she is feeling just stuck in her life. The long-term relationship she thought was going to be her husband, she finds herself dumped. She is stalled at work, just not progressing. People are not listening to her ideas. And, she's really feeling farthest from her dream to have her own family.
Mhm.
And then her mysterious French neighbor gifts her a bespoke perfume, a perfume made only for Iris. And when she sprays it, it opens her eyes and it opens her world to a version of herself that she's never experienced before. One that commands attention wherever she goes. Men are attracted to her. Her colleagues at work are listening to her. Opportunities and love are coming her way, and she has her chance to fulfill all her desires. And yet, it also brings out an impulsive side of her. It is stirring up memories that she has long buried. And the question is this a superpower or is it a target on her back? And what happens when we drop our inhibitions and connect to those primal emotions?
Ooh, I love that. Primal emotions. Here we go with that. Primal emotions. At the heart of the book is this bespoke fragrance. It speaks to her. What was your inspiration for using the fragrance to be the conduit to exciting things happening in her life?
Yeah, I have been just a perfume fanatic since I was a little girl. And to me, it has always been about story. Scent is about stories for me. When you see beautiful color, I love all art, but blue is blue. It can remind you of other blue things, but that's about it. A scent is a scene. It's a mood. You can see the whole room. You can see the fantasy. It conjures memory and fantasy in equal measure, and I think that's so unusual. I love the way that it is sort of this aesthetic pleasure and beauty, but yet it's invisible, so it sort of speaks to the mind. And
Hmm.
I loved learning that fragrance is actually there's a biological backing for this. Fragrance and olfactory processing is part of the oldest, most primal part of our brain, the limbic system. It's in the very center of our brain, completely separate from language processing, visual processing. But there's, in addition to scent sensory, neurons, there's also memory and emotion. So scent, memory, and emotion are all processed by the same part of your brain, this ancient part. And I thought and that's why those things are so related. That's why a scent can transport you to a memory instantly like that. And I thought, what an interesting tool for somebody who's self-creation and self-expression. And I know that for me, putting on a perfume, it's the only thing I put on that makes me feel more beautiful and more powerful that has nothing to do with how I look.
Wow. Wow. It's funny. I don't wear fragrance. I don't wear fragrance. I haven't worn it for years. And I
Yeah.
think if you walk in a room, you used to smell fragrance on women. You used to go into a department store and get
Yes.
sprayed.
Right.
Like go like this, like walking through this room.
Yes.
But what you're talking about is making me think about fragrance in a completely different way. You
Yeah,
studied fragrance. You actually studied this as well. So
I
tell us
did.
about that because that was so interesting to think about the study of fragrance.
Yeah, thank you. And you know what? You're right. You don't have to be a perfume wearer to enjoy this book. And I do think
No,
maybe
no.
our department store experiences has sort of overwhelmed our senses. But really, I do hope people get curious to rediscover it and experiment. I went all the way to Grasse, France. That's the south of France, which is really the cradle of European perfumery since its beginnings. It's where the majority of the flowers are grown for the raw ingredients, and Grasse is a town that's sort of just devoted to fragrance. So I had an incredible time researching this book there. I went to the museum of the history of perfumery. And I got to tour some of the oldest distilleries in France, one of the oldest in all of Europe. Gallimard, I even got to sit with a professional perfumer, which is called a nose, and learn how to compose a fragrance myself, which was so I got to sit down at what they call the perfumer's organ because it looks like this tiered instrument of all the little bottles of the essential oils and craft my own head, heart, and base notes in fragrance. And just soak it up before I even knew the shape that the book was going to take. I learned so much, but ultimately really synthesized it to a story that's not about perfume, but really about people and
Mhm.
about humans and all the ways that we communicate with one another that are not verbal,
Mhm.
and scent as a proxy for instinct and sort of that animal self.
Right. Was there something that surprised you when you were studying fragrance? Was there something that I had no I besides like probably a lot, but one thing that really stood out?
Yeah, so much. I mean, one was certainly that biological backing. I had this sense about fragrance. I didn't realize that there was this real sort of the mapping of the brain that makes sense why, a fragrance is particularly transportive or emotionally powerful. Um, Maybe one idea that I thought was really fascinating is that sense, the sense of scent, our olfactory sense is not objective, it's subjective, meaning there are no inherently bad scents. And you're going to go, that's impossible. What about like, poop or something? No, apparently children learn little kids don't hate the smell of poop. They don't
Right.
recognize that as bad. And even at different, moments in our history back, in medieval times when there wasn't, modern sewage, there would be a lot of stink, but
Right.
they lived with it. There were that sense, the sense of smell has always been socially informed and experientially informed rather than being an objective scent. Even like the scent of death
Mhm.
is not frightening or off-putting because you're smelling decay. It's because your brain learns what that means. It
Mhm.
means danger. It means mortality. It means facing that mortality, which we're so uncomfortable with. And I thought that was kind of really intriguing from a storytelling perspective and everything of just sort of what does it mean to be inured to a scent? You go nose blind to even the worst scents. I thought that was really fascinating and an interesting metaphor for like what kind of pain or suffering we might learn to live with and which might sound the alarms. I just there was so much to play with.
So if we both wore the same scent, would it
Yes.
smell the same on both of us?
No, because that's another thing, our skin is an organ and the wearer really is the final ingredient to a scent. And that isn't just some marketing, stuff. It's real because a scent can smell different on you when your hormones are different, whether you're a little sweaty or not, you'll actually break down the compounds faster and differently than you would like in the winter when your skin's quite cold. And absolutely, some people it won't smell like wildly different, but it will sort of pull for different notes. The expression of fragrance is completely unique to every individual body, which is another fun thing. And I loved exploring this character's transformation and imagining the resonance with a fragrance's transformation, both over time and on a woman who's changing her life.
Yeah, she's at this moment of what to do. You
Yeah.
know, it's okay. So Madame Rapine, am I saying
Yes.
that correctly?
You
Okay.
are.
She's a very fashionable neighbor, very fashionable.
Yes.
You just picture this woman, and she's created this bespoke fragrance. And I love the description of it. And like just the way you wrote about that, right? About the description of this is what it is. Can you smell this? Can you smell that? Was
Right.
that just fun writing for you of like a hobby of yours that you
Was
made
some
part of
of
your
the
life?
most fun and absolutely most challenging and daunting parts of this book was to write about scent. Another interesting thing, we literally lack language to describe scent. Of all of the senses, we have the fewest words for it because it is this thing that's sort of experienced on the subverbal place. And so lacking that vocabulary, on the one hand, it's a great challenge. On the other hand, it lends itself to you must describe smells through metaphor. So
Mhm.
it's that it even you even hear that in the technical terms, the notes of a fragrance. It's a lot of music language, the perfumer's organ, the notes, the harmony, the accords. Um, Likewise, we often describe colors in scent. Oh, this is a green scent or a texture. This one is a soft, this is gauzy. This one is, you know, whatever. So
Could
that
be
so the,
bold. It
right,
could
the
be bold.
description of scent almost brings in other senses, and
Yes.
it's sort of this wonderful, vivid synesthesia that I got to try to put in the book. I wanted to both describe it in a way that was vivid and transportive, but not so nail on the head specific that it blocked out the reader's imagination for them to imagine what would be their ultimate fragrance.
Yeah, because like while the whole fragrance thing is going on, people's lives are still going on, going to work, or doing this, doing that.
Right.
The story is moving along at the same time as well. Madame is a fourth generation nose. So
Yes.
how do you attain becoming a nose? Like, what's your path to do that?
It's really there's a funny professional perfumer said about to grow up in Grasse, you will either become a perfumer or steal mopeds for a living. Which I guess they were just talking about that particular tiny city is so immersed in it. But really, the truth is, it's very often something passed down through generations, and it's something that has a lot of formal schooling with it. So
Mhm.
there are, schools devoted to this, and a professional perfumer in training will sort of learn to have memorized a mental Rolodex of like 2,000 scents and things like that. So it's extraordinary what they can do. It's a lot of chemistry. I loved the marriage of sort of science and art that fragrance is because there really is hard science. I mean, professional perfumers know the chemical compounds that they're playing with and they must know it. It's certainly in modern perfumery, we're not all just macerating flowers. There's no reason, I think, in the professional perfume world to they don't vilify synthetic scents. Synthetic notes are some of the most powerful and beautiful in some ways too, and they're informed by natural ones. It's a interesting marriage. But yeah, so there's a lot of training. But I loved this idea for this character. um, one of the things about Madame Rapacine is that she's older. She defies expectations of her age, but in my conception, she is beautiful and sexual and charismatic and probably 80 years old.
Mhm.
And I wanted to explore that. And she talks to Iris, who's lamenting that she's single at 35, and goes, the notion that women are most powerful as virgins is a lie invented by men afraid of
Yeah.
women's power. And she brings up the analog that a flower's potency, a flower's scent, its attractive power is not the strongest when it's budding, a budding dewdrop rose. No, no, no. It's at the cusp of decay.
Mhm.
And Iris Strokes, decay needs a rebrand. But, I think that I really wanted to play with that because we have such accepted sort of things as common wisdom, like, well, youth is just more beautiful, period.
Mhm.
As if that's some sort of a natural state. And there's sort of the biological fallacy of, it's called a naturalistic fallacy when somebody says, because this is true in nature, it therefore is true and potentially even just or fair in
Mhm.
society. The fact is, it's not that just. And also, it's not even that true. It's just not, I mean, flower scent provides a utility for that flower's survival and its pollination and its mating. And it happens later in the bloom, not at the beginning.
Not at the beginning. Yeah. And it's sometimes you're just catching it. We have a garden here and I'm catching them at just the right
Right.
time to bring it inside. And then the next day it's kind of over. It's like,
Yeah, exactly.
it's like, okay, I brought you in at the right time, but now you've done your deed. You're going in the
Sure.
compost, there you
But
go.
it's fleeting and its ephemerality doesn't diminish. Yeah, it doesn't diminish its, I don't know, it's exquisite.
Aura, the
Yeah,
aura.
exactly.
In your author's note, you talk about a fragrance website that you like, that you contribute.
Yeah,
So which one is that? Tell us which one.
I geek out on something. I don't even know how to pronounce it properly. I think they would call it Fragrantica.
Okay.
And Fragrantica.com is just sort of a massive user-generated database of fragrances and their reviews. And so it's just a place where you can look up any fragrance you could imagine from any era. You can find its sort of official description. Then you can also find countless users describing it to each other. And I knew the time, like I said, I've always loved fragrance and always wanted to see it in a book. And I've enjoyed some of the classics. There are very few books about fragrance. Maybe the Patrick Suskind perfume is one that I enjoyed, but it wasn't really the type of story I wanted to tell or read. But I didn't know how scent would translate. And in a book, because we can't smell it, right? Am I going to spend this whole book describing something that we can't? There's no scratch and sniff as much as I wish. But when I knew that I had something that maybe this could be, it was when I caught myself a lot of times during the pandemic or whenever I was bored or distracted, like falling down these rabbit holes of reading the reviews on Fragrantica or even watching YouTube fragrance influencers review fragrance. And I thought, why is this so compelling to watch people describe a scent or read them describing a scent that I can't smell?
Mm.
And I think what it is it just piques your curiosity in such an intense way. You are imagining what they're describing. Even the scent description is transportive. You're imagining a smell, like, just scent is so evocative, even just talking about it, even when you can't smell it. And that I was like, this is simultaneously sort of impossible to write about, and I must try to write about it.
I have to figure out how to weave this in with the character, but also
Right,
tell a really poignant story about her as well.
yes,
There's sections of the book called head notes, heart notes, base notes.
yes.
And these are notes of fragrance, correct? And you specifically.
Yeah, it's called the olfactory pyramid. It's a real, it's not even just like an abstract idea to describe fragrance. It's a functionally true way that fragrances are structured. In that the top head notes are the chemical, the notes that you smell first because their chemical compounds are more volatile. So they break down immediately, releasing their scent. Then the heart notes are those types of fragrances and scent molecules which last a bit longer, which are rounder and fuller and give more of that true character of the fragrance. And then the base notes are sort of my most favorite ones. These are the fixative compounds, the compounds that actually hold on to the other ones, again, literally, as far as these molecules, and they cling to your skin the longest, and they hold the structure in place the longest, and they really meld with the skin. And those notes are often, earthy or woods or resinous, or my favorite, the animalic notes, which are literally, in the 100 years past might have been real animal products, now are properly, because it's more humane, reproductions. But of these notes, before we started recording, you were telling me about a fur coat that had carried a scent. Um, fragrance was born out of scenting leather, because leather smelled bad because of what the tannery process uses urine and lots of things that don't smell very good. So perfume was actually invented to counter that and scent leather gloves and leather goods. But so skin and skins and notes and fragrances, animal notes. And I've always sort of been hand in hand or hand in glove. And something I really love most about base notes is that some of them aren't very pleasant on their own.
Mhm.
But in the harmony of the fragrance, sometimes something off-putting or a little ugly or a little dangerous or a little dirty of a note really genuinely enhances the beauty
Mhm.
of the florals or of these citrus or whatever else. And I thought that was another like really empowering metaphor that I wanted to explore in the book, because I think so many messages that women receive about beauty are more about purity, perfectionism, being flawless and faultless. And it's hard to go through life staying so pristine. We're
Mhm.
not dolls in cases. We're human beings going through the world and experiencing things good and bad. And I loved the true fact in fragrance that those notes, which might be unpleasant in isolation, can really enhance the overall beauty and power of a scent. And I loved thinking about that maybe even the things that have happened to us that were darker and
Mhm.
uglier and harder in the moment can make, the fill round out the fullness and the beauty of our lives.
Yeah, and when I was thinking back on which section of the book I was in, it
Mhm.
was where are you the head notes? Where are you in the heart notes? Where are you in the
Right.
base notes?
Yeah, I mean, I enjoyed playing with that metaphor of sort of the beginning being the wish fulfillment phase of the scent, and then the heart notes when the stakes are rising, and then the base notes when it's like, we got to have it all out now. We've dug deeper and there's no turning back.
Yeah, yeah, it's like, and I did pull out that quote that you talked about the myth that the women have power as they age, they lose
Yeah,
their power. And I love that. I really love that idea that,
right.
that's where women, it doesn't all end. And,
Not at all.
it used to be you by your 40s, it was over. And I
Right,
remember seeing people on magazine covers all of a sudden where it's like 60 is the new sexy, 70 is the new
right.
this. And I think it comes from living longer. I think it comes from a lot of reasons, but it was very, very interesting to watch, you know?
Yeah, and so much of that comes from shame. We shame women to control them. That,
Mhm.
oh, she's trying too hard. Oh, she's this and that. Oh, she shouldn't have her hair like that at her age. I'm trying to think of the PC way to say it, but like, screw you guys, like
Yeah.
forget it. These are just strictures put on women that we don't need to own, and it's very hard to shake them off, but they're optional. They are optional. And I love that about fragrance, that it doesn't give way to being policed the way that external beauty things can be policed in society. A beautiful woman, there's certainly pretty privilege is real, and a beautiful woman can turn heads, but they can just as quickly undermine her for that. Oh, that dress is a little too short. Oh, she thinks she's all that. Oh, this and that. Everybody has an opinion about how to be the most beautiful, but fragrance, because it sort of works on that subliminal level where you might not be like, oh, I love your perfume. Sometimes you notice that, but sometimes it's just like, oh my God, wasn't she lovely? Wasn't that interesting? Didn't I like being near her? And it could just be that I liked the idea that it could be working beneath the smeller's awareness.
Yeah, beneath the smell of what you're actually seeing. It might just be the
Right.
way you're moving them. I was thinking about during the pandemic, what do many women do? They went gray or they went white haired,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm Italian. We go brown in the box. I mean, we're going to go right to the ends, and everybody says, everybody teases. It's like, da da. But it was so interesting to see so many people I hadn't seen in between, and you have a completely different look, but owning the look, and saying, like, I'm just tired of doing this anymore. At the book's opener, Iris is planning to freeze her eggs to allow herself to be more in control of her dream to be a mother. And I love
Yes.
thinking about it that way. And it's something I'm hearing more and more young women are doing. And she goes from her first appointment about this to a baby shower. Like she
Yes.
just goes. So she's sitting there trying to plan her future in her own way. And she goes to a baby shower and she's sitting through like, oh, isn't this little onesie cute? Oh, isn't this like
Right.
adorable? And I talk about that yin and yang juxtaposition for her because I think
Yeah.
women these days are hitting their 30s and they're living, they're not close to getting married at this point, and there are
Right.
others that are completely into that phase of their lives.
Yes, that was something I really wanted to explore and something I experienced in my own life. You go through school with your best friends, kind of hitting every milestone
Mhm.
in lockstep. And then in adulthood, that really starts to change. And now luckily, in a good way, it's changing even more as women have more options, but it still throws you for a loop. And I'm not Iris. The character's not based on my life. At the same time, I'll tell you that the opening chapter is something that I drew from my own experience. I had the experience of um, when I underwent an egg freezing process, the same day I had the first consultation telling me that this was something I would probably need to do if I wanted to have kids, was the same day that I was helping to host my best friend's baby shower.
Nice, right?
And and it didn't mean I wasn't joyful for my friend. I was incredibly joyful for my friend. If anything, I was so anxious about telling her about this because I didn't want her to think that she couldn't share her pregnancy with me and we couldn't celebrate that together, or that I wasn't happy for her, which is something these friends deal with. But yeah, it's a tough thing. And I think I'm so glad that across the board fertility treatments are becoming more openly discussed and losing whatever totally lame, phony, unfair stigma they used to have. But it's still, I still see the most talk about it with couples.
Yeah.
And, you see it portrayed in media with couples and not so much with the single woman doing it by herself. I think of the funny trope in television shows and movies where the woman needs to get her fertility shot, but the husband is busy running late. And it's like, honey, come on, where are you? I need my shot. And it's so fun. It's like, you can reach your own butt or your own belly. You can do the injections yourself. And it's, I don't want to ruin the TV writer's gimmicks, but you can do it yourself. But at the same time, when you are doing it yourself, it's a very potent mix of feeling empowered, like, hey, maybe I'm taking control of something, and also feeling like you are paying a penalty for still being single, that literally costly of money, costly on your body, sort of invasive. You feel like a science experiment, in this clinical setting all by yourself, being evaluated by the numbers, by a doctor, a problem to be fixed. And it's hard. It's emotionally hard. It's both empowering and tough.
And I've heard, yes, more single women doing this at this point. It's
Yeah,
just, taking control of their lives because they feel like I do want to have a child, but the right person. And I think a lot of times people fell into a trap of getting married to have children, getting
yes,
married to have children. And we joke that in town here, there are a lot of people who all got divorced when their kids turned 17, when they went off to college. It was,
right.
I ran into somebody once and she said to me, "Are you still married?" And I'm like, "Should I?" She
Yeah,
said, "Nobody else is." And I was like, wow, that's kind of interesting.
yeah,
Then we saw all the people that said, we got to this point, we've made a lot of money or whatever, we'll split it and go off and do our own thing. And so it
right,
becomes a whole another part of their lives that we all were not in the same boat doing anymore. It's like they got in
right,
different rafts, different people.
right. Well,
Yeah.
it's one of those things where there is this inherent biological unfairness. There's an asymmetry between men and women. Um, and there's no getting around it, right? Like, this is one of the ones where, like, we can't blame the guys for this being the case. But it still is unfortunate how much this burden falls to women.
Mhm.
First, to sort of always be in your younger years, the policeman, the guard keeper of making sure you don't get an unwanted pregnancy, right? That always seems to be women's purview, to have to hold that line. Then to, if the timing doesn't work out in a perfect way, then to take on the financial burden and everything
Mhm.
else of
Mhm.
preserving your fertility. But it's a fact of it. But I will say that the former, that position that women are, especially young women, are put in to sort of always be the one to put the brakes on the men.
Mhm.
I think that is a burden I do think should be shared in
Mhm.
greater equality. And I think it's really hard on women that to always be in their heads about sex and sexuality and desire. We say, sort of, keep your wits about you. Don't get too drunk. Don't do this because you're, even the discussion around consent, which, to be clear, is wonderful and necessary, but it's still like women burdened with saying it and stating it and holding the line, when in fact, if somebody is going to victimize you or transgress your boundaries, it doesn't matter what the word, isn't going to keep you safe,
Mhm.
unfortunately. And
Right.
when it does happen, then the next question is, why didn't you scream? Why didn't you run? Why didn't you act like an animal? And the question is sort of like, wait, which am I supposed to be? The policewoman who always stays in my head and is constantly analyzing everything and communicating and being verbal, while men just get to be this desirous animal urges? Or am I supposed to be the prey animal watching out for predators all the time, staying safe? Like we put women in this double bind
Right.
about both not being able to really like settle into their bodies and into their own desires, and somehow being at fault for not policing and watching out for the predatory behavior. And this book tackles both. Like, that to be a desired woman is uh in some ways great and in some ways really scary.
And Iris, at one moment, and I'm not going to spoil the book, takes a very bold moment after there's a moment with someone, and then she says, that's it. And it was a really interesting thing. Instead of saying, yep, come back in my life, like, okay, go ahead, it's over, you know? And I
Right.
find it really interesting because you think these are the things you want. And instead, she took the complete control of what was going on.
Yeah, I think when we don't feel our feelings, and when we don't connect to our mind, it can be very cluttered with shame, with stories, that false narratives from our childhood, with shoulds and societal expectations and all kinds of stuff that can get so cluttered. But when something just feels right or feels wrong, that gut instinct level, sometimes it's hard to get in touch with that. For me, sometimes I had to learn in therapy and different stuff to listen to my body better instead of constantly overriding my gut instinct. And I think that's something that I did put into the character of Iris. She's been hurt before. She's been almost fearful of trusting her body and her gut to keep her safe. She takes refuge in plans and doing the right thing and being that perfect person, and putting in the time at work, and just, if I act right, everything will happen in time. And it isn't. And to a certain extent, she doesn't even know herself very well at the beginning of this book. But the process that the perfume starts as a catalyst of sort of getting her back in touch with what is her body saying to her is something that becomes a really important guide.
Yeah, and something happens to the fragrance at one point, and she's like, well, wait a second, have I lost my potency? Like, because of what's happened.
Right.
And it's like, is my life shattered as a result as well? And she
Right.
has to grapple with that.
Because it's true in the book that the fragrance does open these doors initially, and it is making people react to her in a way that they haven't before. And the question is, then is it me or is it fake? Can I
Right.
trust this accomplishment? And I wanted to sort of explore, like, if your idea at work is listened to because they think you're beautiful, or because they're attracted to you in this case, but it really is the best idea. But they only listened to you because they were attracted. But it was the best idea. Is it ethical? Where is that where is that ethical question? Where is that worthiness? And I think it's not an easy answer, and readers may come out on different perspectives about how and when she's using the fragrance, to what degree it is, fair or not. But I think a real thing for the character's transformation is she has to ask herself, can I believe that I'm worthy of this?
Hmm. Yeah.
Can I believe in my own worthiness with or without the fragrance?
Right. And you made her a lighting designer. It's a career I've not thought much about. I think about
Yeah.
lighting in shows, and that's about it. Spotlight, this light, that light. But you describe it so well. What drew you to have her have that career? And how did you get to learn a lot about lighting?
Yeah. Actually, one of my oldest friends is a lighting designer. She's in for architecture, so I sort of had access through her, and I learned a couple interesting things. One, it's like a totally essential part of architecture. When you think about what really makes you want to buy in a home or buy an apartment, it's the light, right? The
Right.
combination of the windows, and of course, in other architectural contexts, a lot of that is lighting. But that's all part of it. I mean, they would be informed with everything like that. I loved the resonance, that the way that lighting is something that sort of, again, affects mood on a subliminal level, like fragrance. I thought there was some communication there between that sort of changing the character of a space. A fragrance can do that, light can do that.
Right.
And I'll tell you that this is a friend of mine from since we were 11, and watching her go through this career, She's award winning. She's very talented. She's been very accomplished, and she has encountered some of the worst sexism of any of my friends in any field. Um,
Wow.
and she's also Asian and racism too. I mean, like it is like architecture isn't too far from real estate. And both of those are very male dominated fields.
Mhm.
And it is a boys' club in ways that are, in some ways, so obvious you can't believe they get away with it, and in some ways that are really subtle.
Right.
And just seeing her have to persevere through that made me think about, yeah, an industry like that, and the jobs where even in 2025 the sexual politics are very real.
Mm-hmm. Well, the book's a lot about power, and Jonathan is this prominent developer. He wields power. He wields
Mhm.
power. This is what we're going to do. And we see how he uses it to and for the people who work around him. And I started out having admiration for him.
Yes.
And then as we get closer to him in the book, I resented him. And as a
Mhm.
writer, what's it like composing both sides of the character? Because at the beginning, he's fun, he's great, he's accomplished, he's
Yeah.
building. He is cares about his child. He cares about all these things. And then you start to see that same money grubbing, like horrible side that you see in so many people, you're right, that do development and real estate. It's just,
Right.
are you doing?
How did I write that? I mean, one, I've had the experience I mean, haven't we all had the experience of misjudging somebody, or being really attracted to certain sides of someone and then having other ones that aren't so easy to relate to. I think I thought of it as I would always keep in mind how he saw himself. I think he is a complicated person. I
Mhm.
don't think that he's, um uh, I don't want to say too much about it. I don't want to give too much,
Yeah.
but I'll say that
He's not as informed about himself as he thinks he is. That's the way I
yeah,
was seeing it.
and I also wanted to write a different kind of apex predator. He's named Jonathan Wolf, but he doesn't present like the typical sharky, aggressive, bulldozing guy. There's a lot of softness
Mhm.
to Jonathan. I love describing his clothing as he wears sort of these luxury cashmeres and, you know, um, fine knits and linens. And, he's the type more apt to wear a lightweight scarf than a tie, and describe him, I think, as looking like an Italian film director, or like he stepped off a yacht. And he's a single father, and he truly adores his daughter. And, um, relationships are very important to him. He's a very high EQ. He sees what people want and need and crave and tries to meet it, and also tries to use it.
Yeah.
And, so that he's both of those things. And I, yeah, wanted to explore what that kind of masculine power can look like, that doesn't feel stereotypical, because I think that there's a lot of different types of sort of influence. And even that, Iris has the fragrance, but he has money, he has charisma, he has his own sort of superpowers that are um undetectable.
Yeah. Yeah. And I also love that she's at dinner and she's with her boyfriend that's come out with her. And he has tattoos on his arm and he's
Yes.
rolled his shirt up. And she is very uncomfortable. And I think we've all been in the position that we're out with somebody and we don't
Right.
think they're appropriate for the place. And because they are with us, that is a reflection on us as well as on them. And maybe more on us because we're at the table. Does that make sense?
Yeah, certainly. Again, I wanted to explore what do we do when we separate ourselves from ourselves, or we review our partner through someone else's eyes. That's from the section of the book that takes place in the Hamptons and Shelter Island. I had a lot of fun in this book taking the readers to some of the most luxurious, exclusive places in all of New York City, and to elements of the housing crisis, of tenant harassment and mismanagement in the housing projects. So you get the full range of um, the socioeconomic spectrum of real estate in New York. But that section is in the Hamptons, which are sort of, this ultra elite beach getaways at his incredible sort of architectural gem of a mansion. And yeah, she's looking at her ultra sexy, younger glassblower boyfriend and wondering like, does he fit in as sort of my partner at this work event thing? And it's not so much as she thinks, oh, he's going to make me look bad, as she wants to protect him. She wants to protect him from the judgment she fears is coming his way. And he's also not white. Gabe is Asian, and she's very aware of that dynamic of the money differences, the racial differences, the everything. And she thinks she just wants to protect him, and yes, to a certain extent protect herself, but they have a conflict over that. But I think about, on the one hand, we should all just be ourselves, and you would hope that she would feel secure enough, whatever, to let him be that way, and he would likewise. But on the other hand, in real life, how many times, especially do women, have to be a chameleon to fit into different scenarios and present a certain way? And our looks are always scrutinized, and you can't just roll up. And that, again, not to say that he can't either, but it's just like she's just used to doing that calculus all the time, and she's used to dividing herself all the time.
I mean, I've been told so many times, you're too blunt. You're too blunt.
Yeah,
You're too
right.
I'm sitting there like, if I did this, they'd get away with it. I can't get away with it because I'm a woman. But I just, and
Right.
I often say to people, like, they'll say, what do you think? And I'm like, look, I'm going to tell you I'm blunt. So like,
Yeah.
yourself, because I'm not going to go around couching that this is the way something's going to be. I mean,
Right.
that's, I don't
I
know.
don't think they tell any young boys you're so blunt.
No, 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 no,
Yeah.
no. It's like, no, it's like,
Right.
this is like, what's it going to be? She also endures a painful breakup, finds somebody wonderful, and then questions the relationship. And I found it very interesting to see that has not changed since I was young. I want you to say that the same thing is completely going on of what happened, why am I doing this, and lots of phone calls. Got to call your girlfriends, you got to show up,
Yes.
you have to have
Yes.
a lot of conversation about it. So just want you to know nothing's changed. Did you
Yeah.
have a favorite character to write? Besides Iris, because I could tell you loved her.
Probably Madame Rapacine.
Yeah. Okay.
I loved writing her. She's a really interesting figure in the book. Um, Not only is she sort of fun and funny and unpredictable and French, just deliciously French, but she's also I was really liked exploring the role she plays for Iris. Iris has lost both of her parents in a childhood house fire. And I think there's an element of her who is looking for a mother figure in this book. There's, multiple older women characters. There's also Marilyn, who works for Jonathan, who sort of becomes a bit of a mentor to Iris while she's working for Jonathan. And neither are perfect mother. Neither are really that perfect nurturing mother figure. And Madame Rapacine certainly is not, in a way, even as much as she cares for Iris and wants her to sort of to bloom, like wants to almost help raise her like a mother, but she's very unsentimental. She's very just has her own, she's a strong-willed character, and she's not like anybody I know personally, but I will say I was so close to my grandmother, and my grandmother is just a cherished voice and in my heart forever. And she was both funny and irreverent and powerful despite being a tiny person. And I think there is a little element of my grandmother for certain in Madame Rapacine.
And your grandmother was a little bit blunt, if I remember, also.
Absolutely.
Very
Yeah.
blunt.
Not a softy grandma like that, sassy and funny and sometimes even shocking. And I love when women at any age, but it seems like sometimes it takes a lifetime to sort of come into that fullness of that character, of their own character and their own sense of humor and sass and attitude and judgment. And Rapacine gives a lot of advice in this book. As the author, I'm not endorsing it all. I'm not saying that the reader can make up their own mind about what they think is really helpful and healthy advice and what is like, okay, a little toxic fun Rapacine. But that's for them to, she's herself unfiltered. She makes no apologies, and no apologies for wanting the best for Iris and wanting, as she says, I want you to get everything you want. And Iris says, I'd settle just to get what I deserve.
Mm.
And Rapacine says, why can't they be one and the same?
Mhm.
And for me personally, that was like a radical notion. The idea that what if I deserved everything I want? What if I deserve it just because I want it? Sort of
Mhm.
such a provocative notion that I don't think women, we don't give ourselves that entitlement so quick. We're so quick to cut ourselves short, as many obstacles as we have externally, we carry them internally too, or we've sort of imbibed them and ingested them ourselves. And I loved this character, Rapine, as provoking her to challenge those notions.
Mhm. Yeah, just challenge and say, okay, what are we going to do about this? What are we going to do about this? So Iris has got this recurring memory from her childhood,
Yes.
and she plays it over and over, and she sees it one way, and one day she sees it a different way. Did you grapple with how to tell that part of the story? Like, did
Yeah,
you
her
know
memory of
certain
the house
things?
fire.
Yeah.
Um, I did I mean, sure, it was something that was really important to get right, to make both authentic. I didn't want it to be a literary device. I
Hmm.
hate that when there's like a black box memory that houses something essential, but we can't remember. Like that feels like a machinations of the author.
Right.
So I really wanted this to be psychologically authentic and relatable and real. And a research book that really informed this novel is the sort of seminal text of The Body Keeps Score,
Mhm.
about the way that the body processes trauma differently than the memory, and how memory does too. But I mean that trauma is often processed in our memories in a very fragmented way. That's the nature of trauma, is it kind of like splinters it. So you have some flashbulb memories that are really clear, but the narrative can be nonlinear and all mixed up. And um, I mean, I will tell you, I experienced that myself. I was the victim of a very violent mugging years ago,
Yeah.
and I obsessively would almost try. I was stuck in a loop of almost trying to remember it because there were certain parts that were hard for me to piece. When did that happen? How did that happen? And that causes so much anxiety that it causes ruminative thinking. I mean, ultimately, that is a symptom of PTSD. But a lot of both the healing and the sort of storing of that trauma, when you can get out of those loops mentally, like, is in your body. And it can, we know they have a lot of studies even about the way that unprocessed trauma can cause autoimmune disorders and all different, it can just manifest in your aches and pains and different kinds of things. So again, like with the way that scent connects to the body and memory and trauma, like I just thought there all these things were speaking to one another. So that was how I parsed out how I was going to both tell the slowly fully revealing memory, and how the fragrance was going to be a tool in her sort of that
Just was.
coherence.
Yeah. So was the title always Full Bloom?
No, this was a bit of a tough title to get right.
Okay.
Yeah. Um,
Look at there. It's
yeah,
better.
for a long time I called it Carnal Flower, which is actually the name of a fragrance I love. Um, but ultimately I didn't want to name it after a book. I mean, after a perfume. But really when we landed on Full Bloom, it felt completely right.
Mhm. It does.
Because it really is this is a story of becoming. I talked to you at the beginning about, like, I wanted to write a story that's like, what does coming of age look like when you're already grown? I think the classic timeline of coming of age stories is really outdated, if it ever was accurate. This notion that we sort of like have a character forming revelation at like somewhere between 18 and 25,
Mhm.
it just doesn't ring true for me at all. If anything, in my 20s, I was very confident that I was a fully baked adult who knew everything there was to know. I'm sure whatever boyfriend I had at the time was going to be my husband. You have almost a false sense of certainty. And
Right.
as you get older, you uncover all the unknown unknowns, all the things that you didn't realize were sort of working on your decision making, or the old family of origin stuff that was impacting your sense of self and your sense of your trajectory. You're aware of so much more, and it's overwhelming at times, and sometimes crushing at times. And it feels like, oh my gosh, I have so long to go before I'm perfect and enlightened, or whatever that fantasy is, that you're going to
Right.
get to some finished state. And I really wanted to just explore a character who is on that journey herself, and explore growth without shame. Can we look at the parts of ourselves that we want to change without, you know,
Yeah.
self-recrimination and without, oh, I should have done that sooner, or I wish I could have been this better, or I wish I was stronger then. It's like, what am I now? Can I love myself now? Can I love myself in the imperfect? Can I love myself through the becoming? I think that's what this book is asking.
That's a good line. That's a really
Yeah.
good line. Love myself through to becoming. Listeners who've heard me talk about this before, I say that women get honest about 40. Before that, you have the best house, the best boyfriend, the best car, the best this, that, the other thing. And then all of a sudden it's like, really great, but,
Yeah.
this is
Yeah.
like, and you start to get really honest. And as time goes on, you get more and more honest about the choices you make. People will say, I wish I'd done this instead of that. I've had
Mhm.
friends that said I've left a job because it wasn't fulfilling me. Even though they made
Right.
a ton of money, they realized all this time they didn't really feel fulfilled. And I have friends that say, you leave, especially like the financial business, when you've had enough or you have enough. And I was
Mhm.
like, very interesting way to think about it. But you're right. And
Interesting.
people, I think, are getting more honest in their 20s and 30s of it's all not that. And maybe social media is helping with that too, because it's so cultivated that you
Yeah, I
sit there
think
and go, there is no
that
way
maybe,
that it's right.
yeah, exactly.
No
It's like, no,
child
don't
cries on
protest too
social media.
much, right? Yeah, and I think the destigmatization of therapy and is has been wonderful. And somehow the paradox can be true that life is short and life is long.
Yeah.
Give your, give yourself the time to discover yourself and don't waste a minute of it being
Mm.
unhappy.
Yeah.
Both of those things are true.
Well, back to this, the cover is stunning as well. Was this
I
the
did
first one you
love
saw?
the
Because
cover.
it's just gorgeous. It's
No,
gorgeous.
the cover was also hard to get. I think it's because fragrance is so, like I said, sort of so difficult to capture either in words or in images. There's a lot of different ways to go. But when I saw this, I just knew it was just so evocative of the book. It really suits the book. And I had said to them, I was like, think Sofia Coppola does a perfume ad. And they were like, true. So I think it's very cinematic and I love it.
Yeah, it's beautiful, absolutely gorgeous.
Thank you.
The tagline for the book is the power to be seen, the power to be heard, the power to be adored. And I love those lines because that's what she's looking for. All those things.
Yeah,
That's
and
what she's
how
doing.
to step into attention, but also how to step into yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. Be yourself at the same time. So the audiobook is narrated by Saskia Marleveld. I think I got that right.
Yes.
What about her voice captivated you?
I love this audiobook process. I mean, anytime from the cover to everything, it's so humbling and touching when other people lend their talent to my baby. And nothing more than you never feel that more than with the audiobook. And I listen to a lot of talented voices and voice actors, but Saskia's just she captured the intelligence, an interesting thing about Iris, I think, is even though she is being overlooked, absolutely at the beginning of the book and being kind of, you know, taken advantage of in a lot of different ways, she's not a doormat. I
Mhm.
wanted to really, clarify that this isn't like a character who's just like, she's all over the place and she can't stand up for herself or she's too shy. Like, really, the fault doesn't lie with her. It
Mhm.
lies in the environment
Mhm.
a bit. I mean, or at least it is shared. I don't want to, she's not blameless, but she's not the only one. It's not just like lean in, Iris. You're not trying hard enough. Because I think women get a lot of those messages too.
Yeah.
Like it must be that we're not perfectly calibrating our messaging at work. It must be that I'm not communicating to my boyfriend's anxious attachment style. It's like, no, actually, you're doing great. And I think what Saskia had that was the strength, the intelligence that is always in Iris from the first page,
Right.
but that she doesn't yet trust to in herself, until she gets the fragrance. So I liked that maturity and that sort of backbone that I heard in her voice, in her
Yeah.
performance.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting because knowing how close you are with your mom, having somebody motherless in a book was a
It's
complete
always my
antithesis.
motto. Yep. I mean, in Ghosts of Harvard, it was, a fractured a schism between a mother and a daughter.
Yes.
And it's a missing mother. Um, as somebody who is so close to my mom, that is like the most frightening, sort of unmooring thing in some ways. I'm able to access it, I think, by just sort of like inverting my love for my
Mhm.
mom and thinking
Mhm.
of like if I just had never had that since I was 11, what Iris has had to raise herself.
Mm-hmm.
to a certain degree. And it's made her, it's a little hardening, you know, and
Yes,
this is
you
this
deserve it. Yeah, big
this is
deal. A
in
really
book
big deal.
writing. She's both getting more powerful and softer as the book goes on.
Exactly. So I love the last lines in your author's note, and I'm going to do this.
Oh, thanks.
And for all the single women reading this who feel proud and grateful for all they have accomplished and survived and built on their own, but still want more, I see you. I applaud you. I am you. Let's get it. I love that. I absolutely
I'm
love
so
that.
glad. I'm glad you clued into that and then came across it. Yeah, that is from my heart. That is from my guts that I want to give that sort of rallying cry to readers who might be like me in this way. You know, I think and to any reader, you know, of course, like if I had met the love of my life at 25, I think I would have known him. I think I would have seen him and I would have been thrilled. But and that would have been wonderful. But it's this funny mix you can get. Sometimes I'm 39 and single, and there are things I'm so proud of and love about my life, and I am very, very grateful for. And I want more. And
Yeah.
there are other things I still want. I want things I might not get, which is scary and hard to accept. But I want us all to sort of bravely go for what
Mm-hmm.
we want and to try and believe like that we can get it. Because if you don't believe, you really won't. So let's just try on a different, let's give us a little spritz, you know, and try on that confidence that like we want it and we deserve it and let's get it.
Yeah, exactly. Make yourself happy. A Full Bloom is a book I think it's going to cause a lot of discussion. People are going to want to talk about this.
Yes.
Are you going to be talking to book groups? Do you have time to do that?
Yeah, you know what? That was such a great, fun, unexpected like silver lining of that the pandemic ate Ghosts of Harvard's book tour. That's something what I did was that if your book club you know, wants to choose my book, that we they can email me through my website and try to find time to Zoom with me. I and what that was like a heart-shaping, profound experience for me. I mean, it was such a more intimate and
Mhm.
just touching way to interact with readers and to see what they loved and to talk in a way that you could never do at a signing. And so, you know, I mean, it will have to be we can to do it as much as possible, you know, as we
Right.
can, as my schedule allows. But I really loved doing it, and I really am just so grateful to book club specifically because I think they're super readers and I care about their opinion. I want to hear their feedback. It made me a better writer. It made me probably a better person. To share my heart. I mean, that's why I write. Like I always think there's sort of introverted writers who write to explore themselves or the beauty of language. And that's wonderful and fabulous in some of our greatest literary, you know, heroes. And there's the sort of even more older archetype of the storyteller. You know, some authors say, I would write if nobody read it. I wouldn't. I would be sitting around a campfire telling you a story. Like, I write to connect.
Right.
That to me is the magic trick of books, that two strangers that I can pour so much of my heart into this fictional story and somebody else can read it and have it resonate. And like suddenly we're friends. Suddenly we get each other. And it's something I really love. And so it's definitely something I'd be happy to do again.
Keep on your radar. Keep on your radar. I hope
Yes.
you're working on something new because I don't want to wait 5 years.
I know I am. I am. It's really too early to get into, but I'm on it. Don't
Good.
worry. And I'm gonna shrink that time. And listen, yeah, I mean, like COVID time was such a weird, depressed era. It wasn't like peak
Can't go
productivity.
to France. You can't go anywhere. You can
Yeah,
barely.
I mean, even though it was like, well, what else do you have to do but write? It was like, I don't know, existential dread. Like, yeah, we didn't, I mean, there was a moment I was writing this book during the pandemic where I thought, like, is this premise just knifed? I didn't know if we were ever going to not be wearing masks. Are we
Right.
ever going to smell each other again? Is now smelling like deadly. Um, but I thought about this Michel Foucault quote that I came across in college. I'm going to paraphrase. I don't remember it exact. I may not be remembering it precisely, but it was Michel Foucault on sex in Victorian England, and it said sex in Victorian England wasn't a secret; it was the secret. And I never forgot that as sort of like sometimes when something is forbidden, um, it is just even more intensely important. And I felt like that was what I told myself all the time, but I believe it about writing this book coming out of the pandemic. again, the book is not a pandemic novel.
No,
It's
no,
just
no.
my experience writing it.
Sure.
But I loved, I believed that like now that we were all trapped behind our computers or trapped in this more remote way of interacting, and even, I was even trying to date a little bit during that, like going on walks, and it was like, wow, this doesn't work. I really miss the smell test. I miss being with people. I miss sweaty dance floors and makeout sessions with and cologne and perfume, and I miss like all of that sensory body experience of other bodies.
Yes.
And it made me realize that that was just so important and so essential, and that all the algorithms in the world can't compete with.
Yeah. Yeah, it was interesting because during COVID, my son and I had it very early. Somehow my husband didn't get it till like 2 years later. I don't know how, living in the house
Yeah.
with us.
Yeah.
And I went to see my mom for her birthday at the beginning of May, and she's walking around in a bathrobe. This is not my mother. This is like not her
Yeah.
usual style. And I'm like, oh no, this is not good. And I said to the boys, we're celebrating Mother's Day. She's coming to the house. If we all die, that's what's going to happen. I
Yeah.
said,
Yeah.
but the bottom line is this could be one of her last Mother's Days. And I am not going to have, like, I've got to take a
Right.
risk here to take somebody out. And she got dressed up. She came over. I said, we'll
Um,
take pictures, but we don't post them because if no, we'll be like,
yeah,
lambasted.
sure,
So
sure. Yeah.
she liked it was a little bit like we were clandestine in what we were
Yeah.
doing.
Right.
But it was a big thing for her to just be leaving this house instead of washing groceries. I mean, we just think about washing the mail, like all this kind of
Oh
stuff.
my God. Right. It was so crazy. Yeah.
But when you think about, especially like the older person at that point, and we're talking about the younger, and now look us to the other side of she said to my father, yes, we're going over to her house, because it was this moment of let's just try something, and it was daring and like, why should
Yeah.
we be doing this? I mean, but I
Right.
was at the point where I don't think I'm going to kill her. I think she needs to come over.
Yeah.
Jimmy, thank you so much for joining us. As
Thank you.
always, this is so much fun, and you bring readers a book that brings so much to life for discussion and conversation. I can't wait to see what people do with it.
Thank you so much. This was such a fun, like deep, interesting conversation. I hope that your viewers enjoy it. And I really just hope, I can't wait for readers to read Full Bloom. I think that they're gonna really enjoy it. It's juicy, and I always think I'm trying to write something that's it's a ride. It entertains you, but it resonates long after you close the book.
Exactly. And you nailed it. You
Thank
absolutely
you.
nailed it.
Thank you so much.
Francesca, thank you for joining us. And to everybody else, thank you for being with us for Book Reporter Talks To. And we'll see you next time. Thank you so much.